Welcome to Season 2 of the Erotic Realm podcast, where we explore the world of eroticism, one erotic realm at a time. I'm Em, a sexologist and kinkster. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize desire in all of its forms, including darker desires. Each episode, we dive deep into the psychology of desire with a sexpert, everyday kinkster, or a kink expert. This is an independent podcast. To support it, please consider becoming a paid subscriber at psychologyofdesire.com, where you'll also find deep dives into desire and surveys that you can participate in. You can also sign up there to get the podcast delivered directly to your inbox when it's released. And now for today's episode.
The following conversation explores asexuality, power, and what happens when erotic identity exists beyond sexual attraction. In this conversation, I'm joined by GoddessMey, a dominant, sadomasochist, and asexual-spectrum kinkster, to explore the psychology of power, sensation, and connection. We talk about what it means to identify as asexual within BDSM spaces, and how kink can be driven by far more than sexual attraction, including power exchange, emotional intensity, and embodied experience. We also explore female dominance, ethical findom, and the responsibility that comes with holding power, especially in online spaces. This is a conversation about redefining desire, challenging assumptions, and understanding that erotic identity is far more expansive than most people have been taught. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm. Today we're exploring the Erotic Realm with May. Welcome, May.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here. So let's start with you as a person outside of kink. First of all, what does your day-to-day life look like right now when you're not exploring BDSM?
Yeah, I actually recently moved, so it's been crazy, but I'm an educator in my day-to-day life, I suppose. I really like exploring new things and I like meeting new people. I would say that I'm a creative person. I really enjoy different kinds of creativity, and that makes me lean a lot towards arts and crafts in my life, I would say. So things like embroidery, journaling, 3D printing. I've made stickers, a lot of random things. And I want to try pottery next while I'm down here. And I also really enjoy doing reformer Pilates. Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
A lot there. Fun. And now let's get into your eroticism. So how do you identify both in terms of your sexuality and your kinky self?
Yeah, that's a hard question for me to answer because I've always struggled to find a label that I feel like really captures everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I label myself at the moment as a dom, as a sadomasochist, and as a bottom.
Okay.
And yeah, I would say my sexuality sort of fluctuates on the asexual spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I might be feeling more asexual or demisexual, and then other times I might be feeling allosexual, which is like feeling your normal sexuality, whatever normal is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Okay, so very fluid. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, depending on where I'm at, how I'm feeling, and I feel like that might be the case for a lot of people, but that's just what I've decided I resonate with the most.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say are your top 3 kinks at the moment? Considering you're such a fluid person, I'm wondering if it's hard for you to pick 3 or if 3 kind of stand out to you.
As a dom, I really like chastity. I feel like that's a standout for me. And as a masochist or a bottom, I'm really enjoying either shibari or just spanking in general. I think those 2 I really like. And what could be a third one? I would have to think about this. Nothing's coming out to me like immediately.
What do you enjoy about chastity?
I think I really like the denial, but also the control.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is like the very first sub I had, right? Back in, I want to say 2021. He was like a chastity sub. And it was mental chastity as well, because he couldn't have a physical chastity. And yeah, that was really fun to explore. He would get up every morning, type 10 lines that would say, "Can I please have permission to orgasm?"
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then I would be like, okay, well, this is what my answer is to that, whether I let you or not.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's just a really cool dynamic because it doesn't have to be physical; it can be all mental as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's the fun part of BDSM,
Yeah,
right?
that's yeah.
You mentioned that your journey into the kink scene started online before you entered the local scene.
Mhm.
So, what was that process like exploring online, and what did you discover about yourself?
Yeah, see, I think I was roughly 19 when I discovered it, and we were like in the thick of COVID,
Mm,
right? And before that, the very little I knew about BDSM was from like 50 Shades of Grey,
mm-hmm.
as we probably all know about that book. And it did not appeal to me in the sense that it was like a male dom and a female sub, right? And I was like, yeah, cool, but not for me. And then it wasn't until I stumbled upon like a femdom Discord server that I was like, oh shit. I was like, this makes a lot of sense. And it was a service submission focused server as well. So think of men doing homework and tasks and all those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when it just clicked in my brain that the roles can be reversed and that exists, and it kind of resonated with me. So I started off sort of help getting subs to help me with my homework at the
Mm.
time, but also doing mundane tasks. So I have ADHD, so I would not remember to take my meds, for example. So I would like have a designated sub to like remind me of taking my meds, but then also checking in later if I actually took them, because
Mm.
one reminder doesn't always work.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one who would like book me appointments at times because I just hated calling up places
Mm-hmm.
and having to do that. And he was really good at it. At the time, I also got one of them to educate me about investing in stocks and crypto and all of that as much as he could. And that sort of started off me investing at the time as
Oh,
well.
wow. Okay, very useful.
It's absolutely very, I think that online submission or service submission is overlooked in some ways.
Mm.
I had a good run with it. I wouldn't say I make a lot of use of that now, simply because I can't think of what I could give to them. But yeah, it can be really powerful, especially when it's a trusted sub, because this was a server where subs were almost vetted in a way, and you knew they would do the tasks. And if you formed a relationship with one of the subs, then you could actually trust them to do those tasks. But I wouldn't trust just any sub to call up and make a booking on my behalf. This was a sub that I had built that relationship with. And I was quite lucky as well, because he was one of my first subs and he was quite experienced as a sub, even though he had never been a sub in person. He had been one online for many years.
Amazing. And then you entered the local scene after some time. What was that process like? And why did you decide to enter it? And what did you go to? Was it a munch? Was it an event?
It was intimidating, I'm not going to lie,
Mm.
and it was a munch. So I decided to go to an under 35s munch because I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's also because there was a newbie munch that hadn't yet been accepted to. And I don't know when in the timeline the next newbie munch was going to be, but I think that one's a really good one to start off if that obviously exists in your local scene. So I went to the under 35 and I almost walked out because I just wasn't sure where they were sitting. And as I walked out, and the munch was in the city, so I'd taken a bus after work. As I walked back to the bus stop, I just happened to open my Fat Life and look at it. And the host had actually messaged me saying, "Oh, this is where we're sitting." And as I went back in, found the table, and actually I actually met one of my friends from the scenes, Master Kane, and he's a pretty good friend to this day, but that was the first time I met him, and he just sat me down and he asked me all the questions. He's like, "Okay, so you're Dom, let me ask you all these questions and see where you stand." And he just loves educating. He's a really good person in the local scene to get to know and just have a chat to, because you might not agree with him all the time, but it's a really good starting point. And I was lucky that, yeah, I got to meet him at that time.
Community is so important. So was there a moment
Absolutely.
throughout this exploration that you realized that kink wasn't just something that you were doing, but it was actually part of who you were?
Yeah, so I feel like that did not happen until later. So sometime in 2024, maybe like a year into joining the local scene, I would say, is I went off to date this guy because we like really hit it off, and I told him about, the kink things I did, and it wasn't a whole lot at the time. I would go to munches, and I had one or two tops at the time that I would see semi-regularly. So I told him about that, and I also told him I was happy to stop seeing them, but I would still like to go to munches. And he was just very much against it. And I decided, okay, for the sake of this, I think I can just leave that part of me behind. And that's the assumption I had in my mind. I was like, okay, if I meet someone who's vanilla that I click with, I think I can just leave the king part of me behind. But that proved to be very untrue very quickly. I was unhappy mostly because I just felt unheard when I was like, I want to go to a munch. And he was like, "Oh, I don't want you hanging out with those people." And it just did not sit right with me because I was one of those people.
Right. You felt judged.
Absolutely. Like, you don't even know what you're talking about when you say those people. And it was a board games munch out of all things. I was like, we're just playing board games. Like, you can come along. God, thank God he did not, because I wouldn't. Yeah, he would just tag along to everything. It was awful. And then I ended it 2 months later, and that was just my epiphany. It's like, no, this is it. I'm never dating vanilla or someone who isn't open to my kinky side, because it's one and the same. I'm not a separate person to my kink identity. And I was lucky because straight after that, the next relationship or the dynamic I had was like a dom sub dynamic. Like straight after that, I met my sub, and I did not think it was going to go anywhere, but he was still around a couple months later, and I was like, shit, he seems dedicated to this thing. And we were together for like 2.5 years. So that was pretty good.
Beautiful. And you've said that your dominance is something that you offer as a gift that has to be earned. What does someone have to understand about you before they truly experience that side of you?
I think that I'm not a kink dispenser would be the best way to put it, because a lot of people meet you, see that you're a dom, and it's such a novel thing, but also there's not so many of them that you might find who would want to dominate or whatever, without that expectation of money, I would say. And I just feel like when subs approach me, a lot of the time it comes with them in mind first. And that just does not sit well with me, because again, because I'm a dom, that does not mean I'm the dom for you. So it always needs to start with a conversation, perhaps just about like how regular people would start a conversation, like actually ask me a question, ask me something, anything, so we can make conversation. And I feel like a lot of the time the burden of the conversation falls on me when people message me, because they don't really ask anything or say anything of substance that I can actually respond to, if they haven't started off with stating what their desires are in the first place.
And you also describe...
And so yes, sorry.
No, continue, please.
So what I was going to say is when my sub at the time, he approached me, he was very much like, oh, you're going to this munch and I'm also going to this munch, but I'm not sure if when I'll be there, but I would love to meet you there. And eventually we didn't actually get to meet at the munch because he decided not to go, but then he decided to go. And in all of that, we didn't actually see each other, but because I knew he had gone to the munch, I was like, okay, I'm happy to actually meet you outside of this. Let's just do a one-on-one at this pub. Which I would never have done for a sub that hadn't gone to a munch already.
Right.
So, yeah.
And you also describe wanting to lift up your submissives and build their confidence. What does empowerment look like for you inside a dom-sub dynamic? How do you achieve this?
Oh, yes. I think it looks different from dynamic to dynamic, but something that the sub struggles with that I can help them with as a dom, because I'm that figure of authority that can give them a task that they would want to complete. So it's almost like some subs are lacking that intrinsic motivation and they need something extrinsic, and then I can be that in their life. And for one of my very first subs, if I talk about him, he was just genuinely unhappy at his work. And I think he trusted me enough that when I did encourage him to try and seek something else, he did. And he was genuinely, I think, depressed at the time. And after sort of changing jobs, working for a smaller business, he found more fulfillment. He was happier.
Nice.
And recently I helped a sub who was just in disarray, disorganized, and he was like, I just need to get my life together and I cannot keep on top of my everyday tasks. And I was like, okay, let's just like get to the very basic root of this and then, go from there. I just need you to do like the very basic things you can do, and we'll put like assign a day to 8 tasks. So you're not thinking about everything every day. Just breaking them down, chunking them down to really small pieces so you can take charge of what you're doing, but it's guided by me.
I love that.
Yeah, just some examples I can think of.
And have you ever had a moment where someone's submission changed the way that you understood your own power throughout this process?
I feel like that definitely happened. And I just cannot think of an example. I would have to really think about it, but it 100% did, because there's been times where I've just been stumped and I'm like, I can do this. Yeah. And maybe a good example is when I really want to start exploring my sadism, but as a physical top. So doing something like impact play, because up to that point I had only bottomed for something like that, and I was very careful and very almost scared of hurting someone, but I knew it was something I really wanted to do as well. And my sub at the time, he was just so trusting, and he was like, you should just do it. You should just try it. I'm like, but I really don't know if I can actually wield an implement and just hit someone. What if I hurt? And so we did like a workshop together, which was like more like a rough body play, and you were using your hands. And I'm like, that's what I feel comfortable using, because these are my hands. I know what's going where. And I feel the impact just as much, if not more, on my hands if I'm using them on you. So that's how I started into it, and I eased into it. And and he really encouraged me throughout. It took me maybe like 6 months to get comfortable with impact, or playing in public at a party using impact tools, because I just felt like such a strong need to just be really perfect at it, and I couldn't be perfect at something I was still learning. Yeah, so I think that perfectionism really gets in the way a lot of the times, and through him being there supporting me and having his trust in me just really helped me get out of my own head.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really fun if something's not perfect, it can lead to laughter and playfulness in a scene as well.
That's true.
So you identify as both sadistic and masochistic?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. How does that show up for you? So you mentioned that you're predominantly a dom, but do you also bottom sometimes in terms of being a masochist?
Yes. So it actually started when I joined the local scene. And yes, I joined identifying as a dom, but I was dating at the time, and there was like a switch that I was seeing, and he asked me if he could like smack my boobs and then spank me. And I was like, okay, let's try this. I was like, why not? So I really enjoyed it. And I was like, that was like a moment of discovery for me. I was like, oh, this was quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was on the scene at the time and had gone to a few matches, and I knew some people. So I asked them, I was like, would you be open to like trying this with me? So I was like a status top. And he did impact play on me, and we also did some electro, like violet with a violet wand. So I got to sort of try those things, and I quite enjoyed them. So that was sort of my masochist journey, and I probably bottomed for about not very long, I would say maybe about 6 months before I met my sub, and then we sort of just went on with that dynamic, and that part of me got left behind because I didn't really have much time outside of our dynamic, but also we were monogamous. So we really just focused on that thing for quite some time. And that really did fill my bucket because I got to be a sadist, and I wasn't really thinking about being a masochist at the time. So my efforts were concentrated in that. And maybe he wasn't really a masochist, but he was really happy to bottom for me because it brought me pleasure, brought me joy. Yeah, I think that's the beauty about submission as well. Like, even though he wasn't a hardcore masochist that wanted to be hurt and hit, and I did not get to the point every time where he really was in that space where I'd hit or hurt him enough.
Mm-hmm.
It really took me time to build up my skill where I could get him to the point where he was really feeling subby in that space.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So is pain something that you enjoy because of the physical sensation, the emotional intensity, or would you say it's something else?
I would say I do like the physical sensation, but I need the build up as well. As I feel like everybody needs, maybe it's not everyone. If it's not everyone, the pain does need to be a specific type, right? I cannot do really stingy things. I can do things that are like sort of stingy, but they leave a thud or an impact. And I really do enjoy like the really thuddy things. They feel like a massage almost. But I do want the pain as well. It can't be too nice. Then you just sit there and feel nothing. So I do feel like the sensation matters as well. And if the intensity is built up, then I can actually shut down the voice in my head and just feel it. So that just, which I think is just amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? A lot of people seem to be drawn towards either thuddy pain or stingy pain.
I know. Yeah, I'm not really kind.
I understand. Okay, so I want to
But
bring.
I've noticed that people's definitions of thuddy and stingy do not align.
True. Yes, everyone has a different idea of what pain is and how they receive pain and experience it, which is also fascinating. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, good point. So I want to bring in a quote here that touches on something really interesting about desire and power exchange. And it's by Esther Perel, who wrote in her infamous book, Mating in Captivity, this: eroticism thrives in the space between the self and the other. And what she's pointing to is that desire often needs a little distance, mystery, a little difference between people. And it's not just closeness that creates erotic energy, it's the tension between autonomy and connection. And when I think about dynamics like dominance, tease and denial, or orgasm control, they almost seem designed to play with that space that she's speaking to. So when you hear that idea that eroticism thrives in distance, does that resonate with the way that power exchange works for you?
I think that would make a lot of sense because when you're away, you almost have this, if you are in a relationship with someone and you are actually talking to them and you are talking about what you might do when you see them, that tension gets to build. But on the flip side, I'm also thinking of online only dynamics, which I've had and I still have. And how does that work in them? And it is very much the same principle where you cannot give someone your attention all the time. So there's these daily protocols, tasks, rituals that make the person stay and feel connected to you. So something like chastity, for example, if you're doing that daily as a ritual, you will feel connected to your dom and you will report back to her how you're doing, maybe once a week, maybe daily. It depends on, who you are as a sub and how often you feel that need to connect and tell someone what you're going through. But I suppose in my last dynamic, chastity check-ins would maybe only happen weekly, but my sub would still tell me, especially when he was in pain, because he knew I enjoyed that. And when I was in my period, he was like, "Oh, you're in pain, but I'm also in pain at the same time." Chastity just sucks. But he was quite good with that, and I lost my train of thought just then.
That's okay. We're talking about erotic space and how dominance and submission and the online dynamics that you have create that space that can be erotic, which is what Esther Perel was talking to.
Yeah. And I think I was just going to talk about, that protocol that you have within a dynamic, those daily rituals. I think those really enforce that, both that closeness and distance at the same time, because you don't need that constant that person to be constantly there giving you things to do when you have a routine, a ritual that you do. And one that I have or had for subs for some time is a daily bowing ritual as well.
Okay.
So I was like, find a time in your day and send me a bowing photo. And I feel like that's not a lot to do, but there's times where they will eventually slip up and be like, "Oh, I did not do it today because so-and-so and such happened." And then that's a moment for me to go, okay, well, here's all the excuses. However, it really just takes a minute out of your day. And yes, you're at work, but you could have gone to the toilet and done it. I don't care where the photo's taken. What I care about that I'm on your mind, and you do that as a sign of your devotion to me. Yeah.
Beautifully said. I'd love to bring in a piece of research here because you mentioned earlier that you sit on the asexual spectrum. And this is an identity that a lot of people still struggle to understand. So I found a research article by Bogart published in the Journal of Sex Research examining asexuality in a large population sample. And he found that 1% of people report experiencing little or no sexual attraction. But importantly, many still form romantic relationships, experience intimacy, and even sometimes engage in sexual behaviors. So asexuality isn't necessarily the absence of connection or erotic experience. It's about how attraction itself is experienced. And when we place that inside BDSM and kink communities, it opens up really interesting questions about what actually drives desire. So let's dig into your asexuality now. When did you first realize your experience of attraction sat somewhere on the asexual spectrum?
I think I was 18 or 19 at the time. And when I was 17, the guy I was dating at the time just really expected me to jump up with excitement when he whipped out his dick at me. And I was like, what is this? And he was like, "Oh, I thought you'd be excited." And I was like, "I am not. Can you put that away?" And I was just like, he just expected me to. I don't know where he got that idea from, but it took me a few years after that to realize I just did not want anything sexually with anyone. And that experience might have had something to do with it, but it probably just, I think trauma-related asexuality, it's still within the definition of asexuality. Whether it stems from trauma, whether you were born like that, I don't know. I don't know what anybody else's experience is like, but I think that's what mine was.
So do you think people
Yeah.
assume that BDSM must be driven by sexual attraction when it's really driven by something else?
Yeah. I think people definitely, or some people within the BDSM scene, but also people on the outskirts, when I talk to someone who's a swinger, for example, they'd be like, sex is like the pinnacle of desire and pleasure. Pleasure is the word they use. It's like, it's just such a humanly thing to derive pleasure from sex. So I don't consider swinging taboo, but BDSM would be taboo because, you don't even do that. And I'm like, that's coming from someone, who thinks sex is the pinnacle of pleasure, but I don't think so. I absolutely do not think the pinnacle of pleasure is sex. And like, sex does not even have to be in it for me to enjoy something, to derive pleasure from it. I think I actually have more intense pleasure-seeking opportunities from BDSM. And that was a really interesting conversation because, we really had those differing opinions and we were listening to each other. And I was like, I can see where you're coming from, but I cannot see BDSM, as a solely sexual thing because, at times I have been very, very asexual where I haven't had sex for years or at least a year. And I've just enjoyed being in that BDSM space, enjoying those plays and having those dynamics. And it's just been really fulfilling.
And do you think kink communities are more open to ace-spectrum identities than mainstream dating culture? Have you experienced stigma in both?
I would say yes, that BDSM communities are more open to it, but I don't know whether I've always felt like that part has been ignored somehow as well, because I do engage in kink. I felt very ignored when I've said I'm asexual, both in mainstream and not so much in BDSM. I wouldn't say so. People, well, at least partners or dynamics, that I've been in, they've been accepting of it and understanding of it. But when I've told like therapists, counselors, endless people, that I think I'm asexual, they just come back with saying, "Oh, I don't think you are."
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've been told to my face, "Oh, I don't think you are." And I'm like, okay, sure.
Oh.
It was just very weird. And so then when I had a phase where I was feeling a bit more sexual when I was dating people, and I maybe had a phase of like 3 months where I was actually sleeping around a little bit, and I felt like, oh, maybe I am not. Maybe those people were right all along. But then I went straight back to feeling super asexual again and then not doing anything for like another 6 to 8 months or whatever. And I was like, actually, no, I still think I'm asexual. I just need to find a label that works. And then I found ace flux, so where you fluctuate on the asexual spectrum. And like, this I resonate with because I just don't see myself having a one-night stand with someone I've just met. So I can be demisexual at times and I can be asexual at other times. But then I will also be just, I suppose, whatever normal means and want to have sex.
So what do you wish was spoken about more in terms of asexuality? Is it what you're speaking about now, that it can fluctuate? Or is there something else that you wish people would understand more about being asexual?
I think understanding that just because you're asexual doesn't mean you don't have sex, I think would be the key, because there's different types of asexualities, right? And then some people might be repulsive to sex, but they might still see sex as necessary for intimacy, and they might still be like, oh, I don't want sex for myself, but I'm not repulsed by sex between other people, right? I fully support that. So there's different views for different people. And you got to understand where they're coming from and what their asexuality is about, because it's different for the person. Their reason for being asexual might also be different. So if mine stems from trauma, somebody else's might stem from religion, for example.
So as part of our conversation today, I asked you to bring along something to share that's influenced your eroticism, a quote, book, or a movie. What have you brought along today, and how has it shaped your erotic realm?
Okay, so I think I resonate with this quote a lot, and I'll read it out. So it says, "Remember, Persephone is the goddess of flowers and the queen of hell. So you don't have to fit into one mold.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, bingo, that's the quote I'm taking. Sorry, just give me one moment.
Sure.
Just wanna...
So what is it about that
yes.
quote that you love so much?
Yeah, I think when I first discovered that when I entered the scene that I was not just a dom, but also I felt like, I enjoyed masochism. I just felt very conflicted because I felt like I had to be the role that I decided I couldn't change. It had to be concrete, and almost felt ashamed that I wanted to fluctuate between the two, or I enjoyed one more at the time, and I really wanted to explore what it was. And I also feel like in some aspects I felt judged and not a part of the community, because when I wanted to go to a maso munch, I had to really message a whole lot of people and be like, can I come? And could you send me the details? And somebody got back to me eventually and they're like, oh, sorry, we don't really, accept people that aren't masochist and you're like a dom. And I was like, no, actually, I'm also a masochist. And you would find that on my profile if you go through it. And they're like, oh, yes, of course, you can come. And I feel like that given that you can't be a dom and a masochist just really threw me off at the time. But obviously I made my peace with it. And since then, I've also realized that I'm not just a masochist and a dom. I'm a whole array of other things as well that I enjoy doing. And with that, recently exploring being a bit of a brat.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it's been so fun, so much fun. And that only happened after I was out of my long-term, well, maybe long-term, maybe short-term for other people, but it was about 2.5 years of dom sub dynamic. And once I got out of that, then I was able to explore other sexualities and other plays and other dynamics. So that's been quite fun. And yeah, I just totally agree with that bit that you don't have to fit into one mold, that I can relax and let a man do the work for me when I just don't want to make trivial decisions. And at the same time, I can flip and take charge and be bold and strong-willed and be intimidating. I'm allowed to take up space in both of those ways. I do not have to fit into one box.
Yep, 100%. And we love expansive desire and exploration here. So I'm really happy that you're exploring in that way. How fun.
Yeah, yeah, it is so good.
Now, something else
I think, yes, sorry.
That's okay, please.
No, you go on. I forgot what I was going to say.
I was going to ask you about findom, because you mentioned that you've explored that. And of course, financial domination is one of the most controversial modern kinks. And you mentioned that you always make sure that you're participating in an ethical way. So first of all, for those who may not be aware, what is findom? What does it involve?
So financial domination, it's in the name that you are financially dominating someone. So whether that may look like taking charge of their finances, which I feel like would be more possible in a long-term dynamic or a DS, where maybe you are in a relationship together and the dominant is taking care of the finances and allocating funds to the submissive to use, and the rest is at the discretion of the dom. What it looks like online is men actually either sending you gifts, sending you tributes, paying for things, and in general just giving you money because they want to and because it gets them off. Yeah.
So how do you make sure that it's ethical? And what's the difference between ethical and unethical financial domination?
I think I would call it unethical if the subs, because you have to realize that it is like any other play for a sub. Once they start sending you money, or they are sending you money, or there's a session going on of some sort, they are in that sub space. And that's when things get distorted. You cannot push them beyond a point and expect them to be able to give consent if it wasn't already negotiated.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of DOMs will not have negotiated consent, but also it's not always possible to have that negotiated consent because subs do not come to you with a lot of information and a lot of knowledge background about BDSM. It might not even be a BDSM thing for them. They might not know anything about it at all. And sometimes that responsibility falls on you as a Dom to educate them about the very basics, like consent and safe words, at least. Those are the two things I like to do. And roll with the traffic light system of consent, because you don't really know if people are saying no just to say no, if they're saying no to be like, no, this is stop, you know. And it's just really important to differentiate that. So I think that very, very basic consent education and safe word education is what I try to do with every sub. But there's some subs that will just come and go before you've gotten a conversation in. So it does not always happen, unfortunately. But I would like to think that I'm ethical in my approach, that I will not push someone further than they want to be pushed. There has been a time where a sub, I believe, wasn't just so deep in subspace. I was like, I think you just need to go have a shower now. I think you just need to get out of your head. And he's like, okay. So he went along, did that, and he came back and he's like, oh, what the fuck? He was just really out of it. And it's like, he was like, oh, I thought I was like only sending you a couple hundred, and I thought this and that. And I was like, okay, well, tell me what you want to do next. And I was like, if you want the money back, I'll give it back to you. And he's like, no, you deserve it, keep it. And I was like, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah,
I feel like
check-ins.
Just maintaining.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think maintaining sight of what's actually going around you and not just caring about my money, not just caring about that I make. No, I feel like that's the last thing I actually care about, because I could not live with myself or just, live with my conscience if I took money unethically, essentially, is what I want to say.
Yep, very well said. Thank you. Okay, so when you think of a peak erotic experience throughout your journey that you've had now, it's been a few years you've been in the scene. What is a peak erotic experience that stays with you that you'd like to share?
What do we mean by peak erotic experience?
So a time where, your erotic template, your desire template, whatever, just really makes you excited in whatever way you want to define excited. Some people would think of it as being sexually turned on. Some people it would be, it really makes their mind happy. It ticks a few of their boxes in terms of their kinks that they're really into. Maybe there's, so people have talked about, non-sexual elements, sexual elements. It might be something simple as like a really good kiss, or the way someone looked at you, or a flogging scene. To full orgy.
I may have,
cool.
I may have asexual and a non-sexual one then.
Cool.
If
awesome.
that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think I just looking back to the weekend, and I feel like it would be along the realm of sexual then, but it was like sort of the hunt to prey dynamic, where I was the resistant brat and the prey, and I'm just running away and being chased and tackled down. That was just so much fun. And yeah, it's something that I've have had in my mind for a while, because I also the thing I want to try is like CNC, and it's not, obviously we know that it's not very easy to have a partner to try that with, because you really need that foundation of trust. And I've sort of wanted to do it on both ends, whether as a top or as a bottom. But I haven't found the right setting, right partner, right space, everything to do it yet. But that was just like that little bit that really got me going, and it was so much fun. And getting lifted up, I was like, that was great. I don't think I've experienced that before, or not in that sense, at least. So that was really fun. Yeah, and it ended up with sex, but that's what I wanted, so it was great. And not sexually, I would say, there was this really good impact session I had, And I think that was like I'd almost gone nonverbal. I was just, I was in a different space. And it was good because the sensation, the sensory experience was doing it all for me, right? There were like squishmallows around me, and I was getting all the fuddy pain. And like it was just transcendent, I suppose, in that way. Because I was in a different space, and I wasn't really thinking about what's going on around me. I was just feeling the sensations.
Fun. Sounds amazing.
Yeah. It was some time ago, but it was really good.
Love that. So finally, if you had to describe your erotic self in one word and one word only, what would that word be and why?
Right. What would one word be? The first word that popped up to mind was fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of all that we've talked today, that I do not fit into that one box that I've tried to fit into for some time, is that I like all the different aspects of, I like the domination, I like the submission, the bondage, and all the different dynamics I've tried and loved and that I want to try still. It's just, I think it's just along that spectrum of being fluid and not being rigid and stuck doing one thing because that's the thing I know and I don't want to try anything else. It's that ability to accept those different parts of myself and be okay in exploring those parts. It did take me some time, and I still struggle with it. I'm not going to lie. Mm-hmm. There are still parts of myself where I'm like, is this really me? Do I really want to do this? But I realize that when someone creates a safe space, a safe container for me to let go, I will let go. Like, I do not always have to be the one in control, always the one in charge. It does take a toll. It is a lot of cognitive and mental load.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We love safety.
When someone's able to reduce that load, it makes a world of difference.
Mm-hmm. Sure does. Mm-hmm. Well, May, thank you for sharing your erotic realm and showing that erotic identity isn't something fixed, and it's something that we discover, evolve, and sometimes completely redefine as we grow. It's been a pleasure exploring the erotic realm with you. Yeah,
thank you so much for having me. This was a really good conversation. Yeah, you are a really good host, and the questions you ask really, just help. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm Podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Erotic Realm Podcast. This is an independent podcast. If you want to see more episodes made, you can support it at psychologyofdesire.com by becoming a paid subscriber and entering the realm with many other supporters. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize kink and desire in all of its forms. And we can't do that without you. Until the next time, stay perverted.